Welcome. This is the May 7, 2019 Board Workshop of the Manatee County School Board, and we're meeting here in the School Support Center, and I'm going to bring this meeting to order. I'm going to ask first our distinguished Vice Chair, Gina Messinger, if there's any public comments for this board meeting or for this workshop meeting.
Yes, there are two.
Okay, you're in charge.
Okay, and they know our policy, so if they don't, they're in trouble. Mr. Gibolina and Mr. Nelson. So come on down, Mr. Gibolina. You have 3 minutes, and then Mr. Nelson.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Glenn Gibolina, taxpayer activist. I want to bring to the attention of a few things. One, I want to leave for the record. This is the Florida Constitution, and Article 5 says that we have a right to assemble peacefully, to redress our grievances, and to instruct our elected officials, and that's what I'm here to do today. My grievance is that we spend millions of dollars on defective software that in the end of the day is going to cost us a few more $1 million. We have special meetings. We try to bring a Fortune 500 company in to fix this disastrous software problem. And by the time we're over with it, it's going to cost us millions of dollars. But hopefully it'll be fixed. On the other hand, we have a Fortune 500 company, Anesto, who's an energy audit company that has been trying for 2 years to get a workshop. Now, the software company is going to cost the taxpayers millions of dollars. This company could save us millions of dollars. So that's my redress, and I am instructing each and every elected official that to set a workshop with this company. They didn't bother showing up today. You know why? Because they're a multi-million-dollar company, and they said if we're not invited, we're not going to come up for 3 minutes and waste our time if they're not interested. This is a top dollar company that is willing to do an audit for free to 5 schools. Now, I'm no rocket scientist, but I will tell you, you need to do that. This last week, they put in the $2.1 million. I sent this to each and every one of you. In Minnesota, cloudy, snow, rain, successfully put a 2.4, what is this, 2 megawatt system at this college. Why on earth are we not doing renewable energy on all our schools, at least the new ones? So I'm also instructing the board members, our elected officials, to come up with a solar policy or a renewable policy in the next couple of months. I've been asking for this for 5 years. It's fallen on deaf ears. The Constitution says I have a right to redress my grievance. That's what I'm doing. I'm putting this in my public comment for the record, and I would urge you to get a hold of this company. I don't know what the big deal is. They were willing to come down here for months, the last couple of months. Started with Scott Hopes. They talked to Mr. Kennedy, and now Mr. Minor's aware of it, and still no meeting. Let's get on board, folks. I'm tired of my taxpayer money not being redirected in the right direction. This company can do it.
Thank you.
Who gets the public comment?
Come on down, Mr. Nelson.
I'm Norm Nelson, taxpayer. I'm here just like Glenn is. Being the subject of your meeting today is charters, I typed up some letters, notes just to me. What I think of as a citizens and keep me awake at night. I did this morning at 2 a.m., by the way, because it bothers me. Well, hopefully today you look at this, the questions. That's all I'm going to do. Do you really need a general finance committee with the current crisis? With the IRP, or will it add to the crisis? Have you promised a referendum committee to the citizens? Question. Is the committee too large? 17 members? You people are 5 people and you can't agree. What do you expect 17 to be? Especially when their charges are not clear. All current board members speak differently about the charter. That was very evident as being a member of the finance committee. You sit there, sit in the background and you don't talk about the charter, talk about different things. In other words, if you pass a charter by any vote, 3-2, 4-1, 5-0, aren't members obligated to support it? So you're behind it? So you all speak the same language? And the last thing is, if you change any charter, will all of you support it? That's it. I hope you talk about that because it bothers me. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Thank you, Vice Chair Gina Messenger. Okay, the next item of business is our workshop. And this is an annual review that the board has of the board committees. The first review is the audit committee. And we have several people from the audit committee who, thank you very much for you all being here. I understand that your chair is required to be out of town and cannot be here, but she's ably represented by all of you. Now, as far as your charter goes, is there some spokesman with respect to any changes that the audit committee feels would be best, for the school district? If so, I'd ask them to come up and maybe point to items in the charter where you feel that improvements could be made by revision.
I have the pages that were in your board attachments, and I can, the Citizens Financial Committee charter is from September 25th, 2018. And ours was revised on August 25th, 2017, but we wrote it in 13, and we reviewed it every year since. I think it's the feeling of our committee that we think we pretty well got this the way it ought to be. There's a couple of words that we'd like to have changed. A that to a who, and an and or, and RFQ added to RFP. And the audit committee will monitor the internal audit function. So I have these marked up.
They've got a copy.
Yes.
It's what
Okay.
Dr. Russo had
Yes,
provided. So
yes,
it's in
exactly.
their packet.
In our packet.
Anybody, you have anything to add?
I'm Rick Kemsey, audit committee member since the beginning. So, in fact, all 3 of us have been there for about 6 or 7 years now. The audit committee is basically an arm of the board. We are here to advise you, and that's why we've always looked at our charter as being strictly in an advisory role. We evaluate auditors, internal and external. We look at the financial reports that go to the government, and we make recommendations to you. We're also here if you have questions on how to dive into the business of the district. But it's primarily an advisory role. We are, of course, volunteers, and we can modify this as you guys see fit. We report to you. We are your advisors. So that's the direct comments that I have.
The main, the meaty suggested change to the charter is because you all have been discussing bringing in an internal auditor on staff. And so that's the reason for on page 3, the addition of a sentence, the audit committee will monitor the internal audit function. That just in a nutshell says that no matter what what you all decide, whether you decide on a department or just an individual, you know, that we will monitor whatever's going on. So.
Any questions from board members right now? Okay, board member Golden, excuse me.
Looking at the charter, the language here says, all decisions shall be reached by consensus of the members present. If no consensus can be reached, then a decision will be approved by a vote of the simple majority of members at the meeting. How do you determine whether a consensus can or cannot be reached on a particular issue? More specifically, can you give an example of where one was reached and maybe one was not reached?
Well, we don't all agree on everything. As long as we have a quorum at the meeting, a majority rule applies. We discuss opposing and pro thoughts on each of the decisions. One of the perfect examples is the internal audit function. Do we hire a high-level internal auditor that reports to the board and works with the internal external, or the external internal auditor? Got to figure on that one. Or do we hire lower level that work with car rigs, basically, and start trying to do things internally? Well, we don't agree. We have 5 or 6 people in our group, and 2 or 3 of them think that you hire a high-level person and let them build a team. The others believe you start off with a lower-level person and let them grow into it. And you know, right now you hear from Byron Shen and his team when they come in and do an internal audit report. Well, that's great, but do you want to hire somebody that reports directly to you that's comfortable doing that? Well, that's going to take a higher-level qualified person than just an auditor that's going to roll their sleeves up and go out to the, you know, audit the internal accounts at a school. And those are the things, we basically ask you, what do you prefer? Because we can go either way on that. Does that sort of explain?
No, sir.
No.
No, it doesn't.
0 for 1 on that one.
Well, that's okay, because we're going to work at this. That's why we are here. What I'm concerned with is that you are supposed to make a decision by consensus, or you're supposed to reach a decision by majority. The first question I asked you was, how do you decide whether you can reach one by consensus or not? And the second question that I asked is, but that was the question that I'm asked, because if you don't, you're supposed to bring us a recommendation. You're standing here saying, well, we don't know whether we can reach consensus or not, so what we want to know is what you all would rather do.
Okay.
When we
Now, that's
meet,
just me.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
new here,
Okay.
so
I understand what
everybody else probably
what you're trying to get at.
understands this, but-
when we meet, it's very much a discussion, and we're typically a very cohesive group. You know, we can tell from our discussions whether we're coming to the same or conclusion. In the event that it's not clear that we're all in agreement, for example, the example that Mr. Kimsey was talking about, then we do put it up for a vote, and we make sure, you know, and we will vote on it and make it official.
And then move on.
Yeah.
So the example that he just gave, what was your vote?
My vote was
No,
for,
not yours personally. I'm saying, what was the recommendation? The majority vote.
the majority voted for, and it was only a one-person swing, was a lower level person. To hire the lower level person and,
But not too low. Somebody that we felt like could grow into the job in a couple of 3 years, and if the board chose to make the internal audit function totally internal or more internal than external, this person would be comfortable enough to you to do that role and comfortable enough to stand in front of you and present as Byron has over the years.
I think Mr. Kimsey and I were on different sides of that issue, so.
Can anybody give me, Can either of you give me an example of where there was consensus on that issue and everybody agreed?
Most everything.
Go ahead.
Well, every now and then, we have somebody on the committee that doesn't want to let go of their opinion or their way of doing things. And there's 7 of us, so if 6 of us think it's fine the way it is, and 1 of us just says, no, we need to keep going, keep going, keep going, we take a vote, and usually then the six people win, and we move on. But it's just, really a,
It's no different than what you do. You got 5 members here. Are you 5-0 all the time? No. I doubt if, very few times,
more a way
Supreme
to-
Court doesn't go 9-0 that much. I don't expect you guys to go 5-0, and I don't think we're gonna go 7-0. We do. Some of the basics of it is we do discussions, we go through the charters and stuff and come up with wording changes, and we all buy into it. And that's the consensus. And I would say in my 6 or 7 years doing this, we've had a consensus on most everything.
Right.
Very little has been contentious, where we just said, oh, that is just the absolute wrong way to do it. Because we all have similar, we're all CPAs. We all understand the audit function and accounting and the like. We're not gonna get into a whole lot of discussions on things that are exterior to what our charter is, which is why we wanted to focus our charter on serving the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Golden. I have a question on page 3. One of your suggested amendment was to, and this is printed in red, the audit committee will monitor the internal audit function. Now, on page 1, under mission, it states the primary mission of the audit committee is to assist the Manatee County School Board in providing oversight of the internal and external audit functions. Okay, it seems almost redundant to, say it again. Are we talking in terms on page 3 to refer to anticipated in-house internal auditors who are, staffed by employees of the school district? Is that the intent?
Yes, the primary intent is before we had only an internal audit, and we felt like, and through discussions amongst ourselves, but also amongst board members and staff members, how would we maintain control, the right internal controls? How would we provide a comfort level to the citizens that the financial organization of the district was operating properly? And so we wanted you to have the option to have a totally internal audit, a totally external internal audit, or a mixture of that and a migration point. So our point was, we can help with the migration. We don't do the actual work, but we can monitor what the internal audit function does.
Do you believe that your committee would be comfortable with wording that said the audit committee will, monitor in-house internal audit functions?
To the exclusion of external?
Well, that's kind of my problem with this, what's in red.
The hybrid.
On page 1, it's pretty clear you're going to provide oversight of internal and external audit functions. That's the first sentence. Why do we need that on page 3?
Page 1 is just a mission.
Okay.
Page 3, even before the change, went into the specifics of how we're going to oversee the internal audit. And we had a discussion at our last meeting as to whether we needed to put in the whole, what we were going to do for an internal audit function, and just realized that what we have is close enough, but this makes it perfectly clear that we have the ability to make those changes, or to oversee that. Because you'll see that the next paragraph talks about really hiring an internal auditor. And so in this whole section, internal audit services, you don't want to exclude internal audit. And so I think this just makes it more clear.
Okay, thank you. I just, in the second paragraph, I guess you're referring to, where it says the audit committee will review the results of internal audit activities. Now, I think that would include both in-house and outside, I'm not going to say outhouse, but yeah, outside internal audit, services.
Yes.
But I guess you want to make clear that your mission includes, both of those things, and I guess I guess, the placement of this thing right up at the top, the audit committee will monitor the internal audit function. You're doing that right now, but I think you're trying to, target to say, additionally, in-house internal audit functions.
Would you like us to say, including
Yeah.
internal
Yeah, well,
audit and
I-
external internal audit?
let's refer to them in-house, okay, because the audit committee will, mission or services will include, will include monitor of in-house internal audit functions. Would you be
Well,
comfortable with that?
The first sentence is talking about the function, and then the rest of it's talking about the activities.
Okay,
So,
all
But
right.
yes,
I
I
think we
mean,
have to
adding
address
the
the
in-house or
That's fine.
external. It's a more clear point.
Both.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Board Member Hopes.
Yeah, I see your point, Mr. Chairman, because really the mission statement is very clear, but then when you get to the actual services in the third paragraph, it becomes a little bit muddy with regards to a board staff internal audit member. And so I think this is one way to fix it, but probably if it just made it clear that the audit committee will monitor both the board staff internal auditor and outside CPA internal firm or something like that. So it's clear that you'll provide that oversight regardless of whether or not that person is a board staff member or a contracted firm, or both.
Okay. Any other comments? Board? We're not going to vote on this today. This is a workshop. It'll come back before the board, and we'll review this and come to a vote as to if and what changes we want to make. But the input from the committee is very important. We want to know what you think works and how you feel comfortable with. Board Member Golden?
Yes, sir. To the members of the committee, do you all see any difference between reviewing and monitoring?
Reviewing has more of a legal standpoint from an auditor's standpoint. You have an audit, you have a review, you have a compilation. Those are accounting terms as defined by Financial Accounting Standards Board. When we say monitor, we're not providing an opinion. We're not compiling financial statements. We're not even reviewing financial statements in a strict CPA designation. We're monitoring what others do. We're guiding what others do in accordance with our charter and your direction.
Well, and that's precisely why I'm asking the question, because your mission says it is to assist the school board in providing oversight of the internal and external audit functions. As I understand the word monitor, that's an independent function that is done without direction, and that is not as a consequence of assisting anybody. It is an autonomous decision made by the committee. And I think that's why it was put in here. The audit committee will monitor, because there is not just a literal difference, but there's a functional difference between monitoring and reviewing. If you're reviewing something that somebody else has done, that's one thing. On the other hand, if you're monitoring something that somebody is doing, that's another thing, because that gives rise to the question of who authorizes the monitoring. And it appears that you want us to do that with this charter.
Yes.
And I'm just not particularly comfortable with elevating the audit committee that is supposed to assist us to the position of an autonomous monitoring of any part of the financial system, particularly since it says that the school board still is responsible for all of this. So I'm not quite so sure if we can, I don't want to use the word abdicate, but I'll use the word abrogate our responsibility in that regard to the audit committee.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Golden. Any other questions on that topic? I'd like to bring up something about the terms of audit committee members. We have a sheet here which, if I understand it, suggests that we have two members, Mr. Blitzko and Mr. Gates, whose terms expire in August. Michelle over there is not shaking her head and saying, I'm misinterpreting this.
Chair Minor, Dr. Grusso, Mr. Walters, and Ms. Vedder will be up for reappointment for July, going into July 2019, July 1st, 2019, for the next year. Their term is up June 30th.
Okay, I apologize. So we have three members whose terms are up. I don't think there's any limitation on the number of terms that board members can sacrifice themselves for the good of the school district. Is there? Please correct me if I'm wrong. And we thank you for your sacrifices. I think that it's nice to know ahead of time whether or not we're going to have your services available. And I think technically, the board has to go through the process of, we hereby appoint you. I'm not sure if we are obligated or should go through and say to the public, these terms are up, I guess, in August of, well, don't you all serve with the fiscal year so that it would be really the end of June?
June 30th.
These terms end. Do we give, in the past, notice these terms are going to end, and anybody in the public who wishes to serve, please notify the agency clerk as to their wishes, their qualifications, and then the board would consider, I guess, the applications for appointment. I think you all are doing a great job. I just think we ought to be clear about who is going to serve. I think that the chair, Grusso, hasn't she indicated that she is willing to go out to pasture or something like that? Am I getting mixed? Saying no, I'm wrong.
We're not allowed to talk to her, so we don't know.
Okay, Michelle, what is your understanding? Is Susan going to?
I have not heard.
Okay, well, great. Well, it sounds like she's going to be around. But we have, do we have some openings, on the committee? I'm asking Michelle about this.
We don't at the moment, but
Okay.
it took us about 2 years. We were a person short for about 2 years, and it took us 2 years to find someone.
Okay,
Chair Minor, it says that effective July 1, 2016, the committee will consist of 7 members. There are currently 7 members serving.
okay, so we have a complete, committee at this time. I think you all are doing a great job. Should there be term limits, like you can't serve more than 20 years or something like that? I'm throwing that out, as an issue, to be either ignored or embraced as the board, or, may wish. I'm inclined to think if you're willing to do it, we'll see you around for the next 20 years. But that's really a board decision, and I'm throwing it out for consideration. I don't think there's any law against it. Board Member Golden.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, before we just roll past the issue of terms, if they are assisting us in terms of being an audit committee, I'd like to suggest that we consider 2 things. Number one, that we allow those persons who have less than a 3-year term, those who are elected for 2 years or those who are elected for 1 year, to be able to move up. That's the first thing that I want to suggest, which then allows you always, every time, a full complement of at least people who will be able to serve at least 3 years. And that the committee that's been working well together and doing their job be the recipients of their replacements by application, however it's done, and that they bring to us the recommendations to fill in, if there are any vacancies, for the 2 years and for the 1 year. It allows us to have continuity. It allows them to be participatory in stability in what the assistance that they're trying to provide. And most importantly, it does not make it a closed shop that you can only get into if somebody resigns. And then if I have a 3-year term and I resign at the end of the 3-year term, then I'm limiting myself to somebody who's willing to serve 3 years. I just think I'd be better served if I got somebody who's already been there a year or who's been there a couple of years that's willing to go the distance. That just to try to get some stability.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Golden. Board Member Hopes.
I appreciate Mr. Golden's point. And that would probably be more appropriate on the Citizens Financial Oversight Committee, because the Audit Committee is a mature committee, so everyone on the committee today are serving 3-year terms, if I'm not mistaken. But your point's well taken, because the institutional knowledge that these members acquire of the systems is important, and we certainly don't want to lose that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Golden. I think the flip side of the argument against, that would be, is there an opportunity for new blood, new insight, different folks coming on who might have, we have to consider that. I know that on the Finance Committee there are some who are very versed in, accounting and, CPAs. Maybe they would want to take a stab at seeing how easy your job is, and and they might apply or something. But I'm just saying that I'm very grateful. At the same time, when we get together to vote, those are considerations that flow through our minds, or some of our minds, in doing it. Are there any other questions or comments of the board? Okay. Lee?
Yep. Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a couple of comments, recommendations, mostly in the nature of housekeeping. Some have already been touched on by Reverend Golden and Dr. Hopes. The first is in the Audit Committee Charter under the section called Composition of Committee. At the bottom of that first paragraph, where it starts out, 3 members will have terms of 3 years. My recommendation is that language is obsolete now and probably should be taken out of the language because it just, I think, has an opportunity to create confusion.
Where is that? I'm sorry.
Under the section called Composition of Committee,
Okay, paragraph 1 or paragraph 2?
first paragraph under that
Okay.
section. It's
Okay.
the last 2 or 3 sentences of that section. Starts out, 3 members will have terms of 3 years.
Okay,
And I think from there to the end of the paragraph is obsolete. Although I think you probably need to specify that terms, appointments are for 3 years. Leave language to that effect in there. You may want to add language that says it's okay to serve consecutive terms, just to clarify it, just to be sure that there's no question. I don't think we have language in here about appointments to fill a vacancy. And in the other committee that you're talking about today, I think it has language that says appointments to fill vacancies is for the remainder of that term. So I would suggest adding similar language for this committee too.
okay. We'll bring those up when we get to, when it comes before the board in a board meeting. Do you all have any further
Mr.
comment?
Chair,
Yeah,
I have one more.
okay.
Reverend Golden started out asking about what a quorum is, how do you reach consensus? The other committee has very specific language on what a quorum is. It defines it as a majority plus 1. The audit committee doesn't have a definition of what a quorum is. Now, it's a 7-member committee, so a quorum plus 1 may be too big. You may want to leave it as a simple majority, but my point is that it's probably best to define it to what a quorum is. And then decisions that have to be voted on are by a majority of a quorum present.
Could I ask Mr. Dye a question?
Yeah, Board Member Golden.
Yes, sir. Because of the smallness of the group, if we accept the definition that you have in terms of quorum, being a simple majority, and we aren't able to reach a consensus with that simple majority, it seems to me it's conceivable that we could wind up with a decision binding on us made by literally a minority of the vote.
That's correct.
So how could we guard against that?
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Reverend Golden, the way to do that is to define a quorum large enough so if you get a majority of that quorum, it's going to also be a majority of the committee.
Then if you do that, you wind up possibly having meetings where you don't have 5 of the 7.
That's correct. That's correct. So, and that's a balancing. You know, that's a choice. You know, if you want your decisions made by an affirmative vote of at least 4 members, which is a majority of the committee,
Yes.
then even if you have fewer than a majority of the members, you still have to have your votes approved at a level of 4.
Then would you have an objection if we recommended that be the case, as long as the committee is at 7?
A majority of this board makes that decision.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, Board Member Kennedy.
That's the key point. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to address that Reverend Golden, the audit committee or the Citizens Financial Committee doesn't impose any decisions upon us. They make a recommendation, but ultimately it's up to the 5 of us to, but I do see your point. And I think we should either, I have an idea to come the next few minutes, which I'll go into in a second, but we should make the 2 charters kind of match up to Reverend Golden's point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Kennedy. Board Member Hopes.
Yeah, and in light of the 2 conversations and Mr. Reverend Golden's comments, it probably would be a good idea that before the audit committee makes a decision, which will be a recommendation to the board, that they actually do have a quorum that results in a vote of a majority of the members, which I think is where you're going. And given the fact that they're going to bring a recommendation to us. I think it would benefit the board that their recommendation to us was passed by a majority opinion of the members, not just a majority of those that were in that meeting. And if they don't have a quorum, then they should meet again to ensure that before a recommendation from the committee comes to us, that it is by a majority of members. And I think the way Reverend Golden was walking down that and Mr. Dye would result in that. But my recommendation would be that before either of these committees brings a recommendation to the board, it does represent a majority of the members of that board.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Golden. Any other comments, suggestions? Or Golden, I'm saying hopes, I apologize.
That's twice you've done
Okay.
that, you know that, right?
Okay. Hardly tell the difference between you guys.
I
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
shorter one.
Okay, shorter one. All right, well, thank you very much for your presentation. And are there any other questions concerning the audit committee? We'll be bringing this up in a couple meetings of the board. Next, we're going to review the finance committee. And let's see, I got this. The Citizens Financial Oversight Committee, how do we have it described here? Citizens Financial Oversight Committee charter. Yeah. Are there, comments from that committee that would like to be presented about the charters, any changes and requests?
No, I only have two comments. And the board this committee is operating at my suggestion. The charter doesn't address the fact that we should submit a draft of each report to you before it's filed or voted on. And I think it's a good idea that be in our charter. We have operated that way and we intend to, but I think in the future, going forward for future boards and future committee members, that would be a good suggestion. The second comment is, as you've noted, we have similar language in our charter about a consensus if we don't have a quorum. The way we've interpreted it, and that's according to Webster, and I'm arguing with lawyers here, so I don't want to get into a debate with you. It has to be unanimous. Whatever the board's decision on that is fine with us. We just need to know what your wishes are. I copied that language out of the audit, and then I modified it a little bit. That's the only comments I have.
Mr. Chair?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Could I speak to Mr. Christopher's?
Mr. Dye.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Can I speak to Mr. Christopher's comment about consensus? Excuse me, because it's come up a couple of times this afternoon. And consensus is kind of for parliamentarians. It's a shorthand or a way to cut corners in meetings in which the chair typically says, is there a consensus among the board, among the body, to do something? And if nobody objects, then you say, by consensus, we're going to go bowling on Thursday. But if somebody says, no, I can't make it on Thursday, let's go to Tuesday, then the chair say, well, we need a vote. And consensus is just a way to say, is it unanimous? And then if somebody says, no, I have a different view, then it goes to debate and to vote.
Well, we've taken a vote. That's
yeah.
how we've administered, but I think you're right from a parliamentarian standpoint.
Yeah.
Whatever the board wishes on that.
Okay. Any other? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your comments. Okay. Board Member Golden.
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And everybody probably knows the answer to this but me, but I'm new, so you have to help me out. The
No.
mission of this committee says the mission of the Citizens Financial Oversight Committee, as constituted in the School Board of Manatee County, Florida, Resolution 2017-11, is to provide oversight to ensure proper fiscal stewardship of operating funds provided by the special election approving a 1 mil increase in the school ad valorem tax as provided by section 1001.73(2) of the Florida statutes.
Yes, sir.
Is there any confusion among the members of the Citizens Financial Oversight Committee as to what their primary stated mission is in their charter?
I'm anticipating that I do understand the underlying concerns. No, there is no misunderstanding, but we interpret that to mean you have passed the 1 mil and we're to monitor it, and you have expected certain results. Those results are in the resolution, and the resolution goes on to state that the Financial Oversight Committee appointed by the school board shall issue, I'm adding at least, an annual report to ensure proper fiscal stewardship of the funds, that is, monitoring the funds and the budget. In addition, the committee shall identify relevant outcomes and shall report results to the community. So that is in the language of the resolution, and we're adopting that language. And the committee has, with a quorum, complete consensus on that position. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm giving you the flavor of the committee.
Oh, that's all right, because
Yes, sir.
I think where, and I can see clearly now. I think the problem that arises out of the unstated underlying notions is relevant outcomes.
That's correct.
Okay, and just from reading the language and reading the purpose of this charter to begin with, the only relevant outcome as it relates to this charter committee is the outcomes as it relates to the spending of the ad valorem taxes approved in the 1 mil increase. There are other outcomes. There are all kinds of outcomes that occur as a consequence of financial administration of the district. But the only relevant outcomes are for this committee are the outcomes as a consequence of the ad valorem tax money being spent as it was provided for in the referendum. Anything else, in my opinion, is an expansion of the charter, the intent and the extent to which you are charged with providing assistance to the school board. And I'm glad we can just get all this out, because I know that now we are really having everybody's confused about what we're supposed to be doing. And I think it boils down to these two words, relevant outcomes. And the only relevant outcomes, in my opinion, are the outcomes that arise as a consequence of your performing your duty under this particular charter, which is to be in charge of the referendum income and to report and to help with that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Golden. Board Member Hopes.
And you may be right, Reverend Golden, because now that I hear your statements that you're kind of new at this, one of the underlying purposes of the Citizens Financial Oversight Committee is to help us progressively prepare to go to the voters to renew this tax. And there were discussions and commitments, not just how the money was going to be spent, but what the district was going to gain from those expenditures. For example, lengthening the school day. Lengthening the school day is to improve academic achievement and student success. So that's one thing that needs to be measured. Increasing teacher pay outside of the extended day was to improve recruitment and retention of teachers. And with regards to the STEM investment, to get STEM into our elementary schools, not just to put STEM in our elementary schools, but to prepare our elementary students to succeed in STEM fields and throughout their middle school and high school years. With regards to the retention and recruitment of bus drivers, where was the baseline? So when we go to the voters, all of these areas where we allocated monies, not just that it was spent appropriately, but we got the improvements that we told the voters we were going to achieve by spending these dollars. So it should not be viewed as narrow as, in my opinion, as narrow as, okay, you said you're going to spend this much money on STEM, you're going to spend this much money on teacher pay for the 30-minute day, this much money, you know, et cetera. It's so that at the end of the first 3 years of us collecting these dollars and expending these dollars, that there is an independent committee of citizens that attest to not only the prudent use of these dollars, but the district indeed achieved progress towards the goals and commitments that we said we were going to gain from the investment by the public of these $30+ million a year.
Okay, thank you, Board Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mark?
Yes. Okay, Board Member Kennedy.
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Hopes, I agree, and those are good points. I think where I would disagree with you a little bit is I think that I wouldn't even say disagree, just a different way to look at it would be that all the data that will provide the answer to those questions that you raised, teacher retention, bus driver pay, academic achievement, those will all be I'll just keep it positive. They will all be verified by district that data already provides, or in the, school grades, for example, or, you know, our HR department will provide data on how many openings did we have, or what percentage of openings did we have in 2018, and how many percentage of openings do we have in 2022, and so forth. I have had this conversation with the committee, or in the committee a few times.
Yes, you have.
Chair Christopher has said, you know, there's an underlying ongoing topic here, which you know, we've talked about this before in this room, and I said to, I can't even remember what the issue was, but I kind of pulled it back, and I was like, well, wait a minute, what does this have to do with the referendum? And got a response, and I wasn't asking in a, you know, it was an honest question, and the committee answered it. But Chair Christopher had an interesting comment. He said, well, if all you want us to do is watch the funds, then you might as well disband us and make us part of the audit committee, or ask the audit committee to do it, I think was the.
That was my, that might have been.
I'm paraphrasing your words,
That might have been
but.
too flippant, though. I respect the board's decision.
No, of course.
Okay.
So, and Brady, you can jump on me in a second.
Brady has a response.
Yeah, just when you do want to speak, come up. But the I guess I'll jump ahead, and this is not a. I don't want to present this idea as I think we should go forward with this, but I just want to present it as food for thought to the board and both committees. But ever since that conversation that day in the Oversight Committee, I thought to myself, why don't we merge these two committees? Because I know there's going to be some instant reactions, I know. As Dr. Hope said earlier, the Audit Committee is a boy, this idea is already going over well in the room. You know, the Audit Committee is a mature committee. I thought that was a good choice of words.
It is, and a very good,
and they're highly functioning, and they do a really good job.
Right.
Part of the idea, part of the reason for this idea is by combining committees, you take all this oversight into one committee, and there are multiple people on the Financial Oversight Committee already who by the Audit Committee's chair, they have either are a CPA or have experience in school finance. So anyway, I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I just want to put it out there as a possibility.
Okay. Board Member Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Get the conversation started.
Yeah. First off, I want to thank Dr. Hopes and Mr. Kennedy for elevating this to the level that I think it needs to be. First off, the combining, well, I'll take the second issue first. The combining of the committees, what it does is it takes two separate functions and combines them, and that really takes away from the efficiency and effectiveness of both or either. An audit function is just what that says. It is to review, to determine what has happened, and determine why what has happened and what corrective measures need to be taken. And they, in this instance, that is system-wide. This particular committee is functionally oriented to operating as it relates as a reporting mechanism for a set of funds that come into this district. Now, I know we'd like to expand that, but the real check and balance, since they both report to us, is in a superintendent that we all just invested a lot of time and a lot of energy, and that we all say that we have a lot of confidence in, to say to us, yes, the findings are correct that are coming to you from the Citizens Finance Oversight Committee, that those dollars were spent properly, or if they were spent improperly, because that's a different problem than all of the other issues that are supposed to come from it. The results are different from the input. And so if the input is not right, we surely aren't going to get the results that we're looking for. So if the money is being spent improperly, if the money is not being used in the ways in which it was supposed to be used, and I think we've had some issues about that, whether the charter, or not charter schools, whether the contract schools are entitled to be a part of the monies that are going. Okay, so we've already had a decision that has been given to us in this regard. The results, I'm not looking to the audit committee to give me the results or the things that I'm looking to the superintendent. That's who is the chief person in charge of this district. And when I ask her, why haven't the student grades, school grades have gone up? Why aren't these issues that were supposed to be cured, why have they not been cured if the money has been spent properly? And her answer's got to be, we didn't get enough money, which I think is a good argument for going back asking it to be renewed. Or we got enough money and we wasted it, which I think is a good argument for letting her go and for not not getting the community behind us to have it renewed. Or she's going to say, we spent the money, you know that, and we spent it properly because the committee has said that, and here are the results that we as your school district employees have to show for it. And guess what? If that's not correct, that is what the audit committee is about. That to me is what the audit committee, either to follow up on that, to see and to verify and to validate whether the report that we got about the money being properly spent and the report that we got about the results being appropriately achieved is borne out by the audit process. That's kind of where I'm thinking that we need to be trying to separate these functions, because all of those people report to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that may be continued at a regular board meeting. Mr. Hopes, Board Member Hopes, Board Member Vice Chair.
Brady.
You have some comments you wanted to make?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine, please.
I didn't know if you were trying to cut us
No.
off or, okay. When I was reading through everything, the number one thing that I said was that we need to define relevant outcomes. I agree with you. It's that wording that makes it very difficult, I think, for this committee. What does that mean? And I hear your argument of what it means. The irony of what you're saying of what it means now is that when we were talking about forming this committee and I wanted educators, you didn't want any educators. You only wanted finance people because it was only going to be about finance. So now I'm even more confused. And if that is the case, then we should focus more on having educators or retired principals or other people like that, if that is truly what the goal of this committee is. Because when we first discussed this committee, that was not a goal. The goal was to show that the money was being spent properly. And I understand your point about relevant outcomes as related to the money, which is separate than the outcomes of the education side, which would then come from the district. And I totally hear that argument as well. They're both good arguments. I just think if that is the goal, then the composition of this group may not fit what that goal was.
You're right.
Okay, so
Mr.
What-
Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Messenger. And it appears that Mr. Hopes may have some comments regarding your comment.
Sure.
Okay, Board Member Hopes.
What, your comments suggest that you need an educator to sit on the Financial Oversight Committee to define what items should be looked at, or, so here's, no. So here's, now, I'm not gonna say that there aren't educators that have PhDs and know how to do causal research and things like that, but you don't need educators on the committee when the committee can call educators forward to help them identify what the educators, what the superintendent thinks are appropriate outcomes that can be tied to a causal study of whether or not these dollars produced it. So the reason for having both experts, and as you know, the committee has grown to where there are educators on the committee, and they serve well, and the input from them is from a dialogue. But the purpose of this is to have that independent oversight committee that brings a spectrum of expertise to be able to do the analyses or have the analyses done that clearly, statistically, and reliably shows that we have gotten progress towards those goals from the use of these funds. And like I said, that doesn't mean that there aren't a number of educators out there that have both the financial acumen and research acumen to be able to look. But if you look at I think they have a committee that deals specifically with data and analytics and asks those questions of staff and of the superintendent with regards to appropriate measurements to build into the analyses that will be used to provide that reporting. And I can understand where your perspective would come from, but there's a big difference between the committee coming forward independently of our own staff and attesting to the favorable outcomes of this investment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Hopes. Mr. Christopher, do you have some comments regarding this?
Yeah, just to, we do have Dr. Horwitz on the committee, who is educationally trained. We had Lori Breslin, which was a wonderful person for communication of this area. We have former teachers and former board members in this area. So we did have that expertise on our committee. Now, you can judge better than me how well it was represented. I'm not trying to advocate, I'm just clarifying.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Christopher. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, sir. Chair Christopher, I do want to reiterate that, and you said it, but I don't think it was heard, that the comment that you made to me at that meeting was not made flippantly at all. That we should disband you and give it to audit. It was a good conversation. I didn't mean to frame it any other way.
I was trying to use the extreme to make a point.
Right.
I don't.
No, it's conversations in there are
point,
always.
I don't want to argue
positive.
with. I'm now faced with two people with extensive legal training. The thing that gave the committee pause, and I'm not trying to debate law with you, Mr. Minor, Chair Minor, that it talks about the ensure physical stewardship. Then it says, in addition, the committee shall. And you tell me, as lawyers, does that broaden us? I don't know. The committee was wrestling with their responsibility to the community, that's all. But our primary responsibility is to the board. We understand that. We're created by the board. And I appreciate your problems.
Okay, well, thank you.
Mr. Minor,
I
I was not quite done,
Okay.
if I could.
Board Member Kennedy.
Thank you. I just have two other quick things to add now that my combining the committee has died the quick death it deserved. This is just maybe one housekeeping item. I believe the financial committee is now down to 15 members.
I believe that's right.
So perhaps, again, as Chair Christopher has mentioned to me personally at a meeting, you know, it was a big group, so that was part of the reason for some of the growing pains. So maybe in the charter, if we could take it down to 15, because that's the current membership now, so that might
Provided 9.
helped.
9, the charter.
9 to 15. I'm just saying move that ceiling to 15 instead of 18. Might help that in the future. The other suggestion I would have for both charters would be to, I guess the way I have it on the way I just noted to myself is kind of formalize that request for information process. So that, for example, this is just an idea, again, food for thought, is that request for information, it is spelled out in the charter that request will come from either the chair or the vice chair, and those requests are approved by a majority of the board.
We would agree with that completely. We got off to a very rough start on requests for information, and we caused the administration some headaches there.
Yeah, and as, you know, part of that was we put 18 people in the room.
Well,
And that probably didn't help.
Look, we're moving forward. We're not.
We are
Yes.
moving forward, that's true. So that, again, I know we're just discussing today, but that would be my suggestion, to just add a paragraph to both charters for that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Brady had a comment.
okay, thank you.
I just wanted to
Mr.
clarify,
Board Member
and thank you guys for taking the time, but I'd like to make sure that Charlie's point from earlier gets specifically addressed and understand where the majority of the board, the consensus of us, is coming from, which is to provide you all the information that you need to go back to the voters. And the voters of Manatee County aren't going to care that we spent $14 million in STEM. They're going to care that the $14 million in STEM that we spent yielded results that are measurable and accurate. And those are the things that I think you guys need to focus on. Whether we have to change a word or two in the charter, that's fine. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is how do we go back 4 years from now and convince the people of Manatee County, this worked, let's keep doing it. That's all.
And you are right. We're going to get most of our information from the administration. We're not going to duplicate that effort. And there's information from the state that we get, but we're relying on third parties.
Sure.
Okay, Board Member Golden?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. To follow up on what Mr. Dye had alluded to with respect to the other board and the compositions, I think this would be as good a time as any to deal with, number one, lowering it not from 18 to 10, but to 17. And I say that because, in my opinion, it's just always good to have an odd number so that you avoid even votes. And secondly, because the composition of the committee includes, notwithstanding the foregoing, the president of the Manatee Education Association and the president of the local chapter of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Workers. If you take 2 from 17, that leaves 15, and then that allows each of the members of the board to nominate, propose, support 3 people to be supportive of this, especially since, I hate to be political, but the reality is that the people have already voted that we should have single-member districts. That will not apply to the next round of elections, but it will certainly apply in 2022. And this is one committee, which is when this goes back before the people in 2022, that I would really appreciate knowing that it was made up of people from across the district who either support or do not support the renewal of this. And this is a good way to start that. I don't know, don't care, don't want to discuss how we got the present composition. That's unimportant. What I really want to discuss now is how we can make it equitable amongst all of us. And to me that, and if we draw from the present constituencies, the present composition of the committee, that's fine. But I think it's paramount that we have a countywide representation and that each of us get a 3-year, a 2-year, and a 1-year representative to serve on that committee, which would be 15. I just to try to get us beyond this, how we got here, and to not keep looking back in the past, one eye behind us and one eye in front, and we just keep stumbling forward. So that I think is is important. That same language, because then it allows, what is it, a quorum to be made up of a majority. It allows us to be participatory in the composition of that committee. So we all take ownership of the results that come out of it.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Golden. Any other comments? Board Member Vice Chair Messenger.
Only that I don't know if I've heard, if everybody agrees with what the term relevant outcomes really is going to mean. I mean, Mr. Golden brought up a valid point, and I don't know if I've really heard from everyone else what they believe that that should mean. I think Dr. Hopes has said that he thinks it should mean the educational aspects. I think Mr. Kennedy has said that. And you seem to indicate that you think it should only be financial matters. Am I understanding you correctly?
Okay, only to the extent that that is the charter mission. And as the chair just sat down going to his seat saying, and most of the information they're going to get will come from the administration. But I'd prefer to have my information come unfiltered. I'd really like to be able to look at the financial information and be told that it was spent properly or not spent properly. Here's where it was spent properly, here's where it was not spent properly. And then I'd like to ask the superintendent, why is that? And I'd like to have that information brought so that, as you all say, the five of us by majority can determine what we're going to do to provide the corrections or to achieve the outcomes. We don't have to wait 4 years from now to do that, because this committee is charged with bringing us a report every quarter. What does it say? There should be an annual report.
It's annual.
Okay, but I'm sorry. Well, maybe that was the audit committee. But they're charged with bringing us an annual report. And so maybe that might be something that we could consider getting a report from them twice a year in terms of what we would like to see about the money being spent. Because I know that we do budget amendments and we do budget corrections, and that's fine. I would like to have a specific, particular input from them twice a year as to how we're doing with the funds that came from the referendum. That does not replace or substitute for the overall well-being of the district. And I'm not, will somebody tell, how much money of the whole budget for the district is this referendum? 37.
I apologize.
37 million of what? I've told we got $1 billion.
708.
Yeah, so we're talking about 5% of the budget that they are reporting to us on. And yet, we're gonna ask them, and by the way, tell us about the outcomes for all of the other money. I'm not so sure that that's a good use of our time and a good use of information. So I'm not saying relevant outcomes is more than what is set forth in that charter. That's what's relevant for this committee with oversight over $39 million. Because when they go looking at all of the other monies, operation capital outlay, then I'm like you, I get confused. Who do I need to be listening to? Who is providing me information? If they tell me revenue should have spent $100 million on teacher salaries, and we only spent $75 million, that's a $25 million difference. I want to know factually, why is that? What's the difference? And she's the one that's accountable for that, not the committee. So that's what I mean by relevant outcomes. The relevant outcomes for them is an accurate accounting of the money that they have stewardship over watching. Because we still have to make the decisions. She could come back and tell us, well, the reason it's only 75 million is because you all put a freeze on hiring in March, and we couldn't hire any more teachers. And I don't want to have them saying, well, I don't want to give a filter between me and the information. That's what makes it relevant to me. What am I able to make a decision based on?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Board Member Golden.
Did that help? I'm sorry, I don't know whether I
Okay,
answered your question.
you're out of order.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Christopher, did you have some further comments? you
Just a
wanted to
comment
share?
of clarification on this narrow interpretation. We have reviewed the referendum dollars as they interact with the entire budget expenditures. And we've done this board and this committee believes that we should continue to meet our obligation of growth in core expenditures and not substitute referendum dollars for expenditures that we're obligated, morally obligated to maintain. We are monitoring that. I guess I've got a question for the board. If we go to the narrowest interpretation, do we continue to review referendum dollars as they relate to the total budget, or just the referendum dollars? These are the kind of things we wrestle with. We know that we're aligned with this board right now on those issues. I worry about drift in the future. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Christopher. Board Member Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make this brief. And I think I just wanted to come back to the relevant outcomes conversation. And I think I don't want to repeat anything that's already been said, but for me, the concern was, this is no longer my concern. But starting out, my concern was, do we have a committee that is starting out looking for negatives? Again, I don't believe that to be the truth. But I do think, and as Chair Christopher said, I think the board has confidence in the committee has confidence in the district and our financial team. But I think it is an interesting conversation to have, because relevant outcomes to a committee that is looking for problems versus a committee that is looking to support the district, relevant outcomes could mean completely different things. So, but I mean, to Mr. Christopher's point, but that's going to be an ongoing, that would be an ongoing issue for as long as the committee is functioning. That's, again, not my concern any longer. I think there's a healthy skepticism on the Financial Oversight Committee, which is a good thing to have, because then in 2022, when we go forward, we can go to the community and say, hey, look, the committee that oversaw it, this was not a bunch of, we didn't pack these people with, yes men and women who are going to tell the community what the district wants them to say. So, but I just want to throw that in, because I think you can take the same set of data and statistics and you can tell whatever story you want with it. I feel confident now that this committee will tell a story that is, and maybe there will be some warts in it, but it's not a committee that's looking to undermine us. So that's just my take right now.
Board Member Hopes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, very good points, Mr. Kennedy, because I remember as we set forth to create this committee, there was obvious concern around the table. Was it being stacked one way or the other? And it really wasn't. This committee has evolved, I believe, into a committee that wants to assist the district in ensuring that we're able to renew this tax.
I totally agree.
And to Vice Chair Messenger, almost a third of the members are educators, because I forgot about Mr. Simmons. And, they're there to help identify where we need to be looking for outcomes. And as more importantly, and this is to Reverend Golden's comments, this committee is looking to ensure that the district continues to budget increases into these areas and not substitute referendum dollars for those annual increases. And that's very important. And that's a difficult task to ensure that they are advising the board, should they identify the district, much like lottery funds, they were all supposed to go to this, and the legislature kept taking money out of the lottery and using it to offset general revenue. And so that's the reason why, that they really should be looking in these areas to ensure that when our staff, under the superintendent's guidance, allocates dollars, that there is not a creep of the $1 million into the areas which should get, their regular, much like we did with salaries. And so it's not as simple as putting on this very narrow scope. And it's my opinion, it's going to be very important that we have this diverse group, which includes, retirees from the district, as well as, other members of the community and entrepreneurs and finance people, to go to the public and be our champions that we have done this right from day one, and the voters should renew this tax, because that's the focus. And they have been instrumental in identifying areas where the district may have misspent the funds in accordance with state law. The only other thing I'll add, and I think we move beyond the point, is the board's audit committee is provided for in statutes, and the Citizens Financial Oversight Committee is provided for in the resolution and the ballot. So they really are supposed to be, independent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Holmes. Okay. Okay, Board Member Kennedy.
I'm going to completely change the subject, and Reverend Golden brought this up earlier, but speaking of the Financial Oversight Committee, and I see Becky is in the back of the room, again, Becky's been waiting a long time for an answer, and this is just a request for an item. We put this on the Financial Oversight Committee to give us a decision, to give us a recommendation. They have done that, and I would like to ask that we give Just for Girls an answer, whether it's yes or no, but let's please give them an answer at the next meeting. I think we all know the issue. We all know we've got an opinion from Mr. Dye, but can we just give the school an answer at our next meeting, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Kennedy.
Mr. Chair, are we giving the school an answer, or are we giving contract schools an answer?
I'm sorry, do you have a comment, or?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I wasn't just so clear as to whether or not he was asking to put on the agenda the specific issue of the one school, or whether it was the issue of contract schools being excluded. That was
Okay. Thank you, Board Member Golden.
Can I answer that?
Board Member Kennedy.
Just for Girls, not all contract schools, just that one school. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Board Member Kennedy. I think that we've had a very wide, discussion here today. It was brought up about the last sentence in the Citizens Financial Oversight Committee about the committee shall identify relevant outcomes and report results to the community. And I guess concerns are how you interpret that. Is that really what was promised? Do we want that in there? Now, these things will be decided, at a board meeting, but we've had a lot of good discussion about that today. It's been brought up about, the size of the membership of the committee. The number one concern that I've heard from various people in the community was the size of this particular committee, that it affects its efficacy by having this large number. And I think that many of us have compared this with the Finance Committee in Sarasota, which has 7 members, which does, most people feel, a very admirable job for a very admirable, school district's, finance situation, which involves both the, review of the, millage, but there are, other taxes as well, and very thorough publications. They don't meet, I think maybe like a half a dozen times, during the year to review and receive input about, the finances, how the money is coming in. Is it coming in expectations, report about what is coming in, into what accounts it's going, and comparing data that the district has as to, what results have come from the money. Now, there's a difficulty that is brought up about, how do you delineate the effect that millage money has upon performances, in the district, and that's not an easy job. And you get into, relevant outcomes. To what extent has, money come in, affected the number of teachers that are coming to our district, from Sarasota. That could be considered a relevant outcome. As a result of what? Of this millage? I mean, some people would be quick to say so. I would, sure. The direction of the traffic of teachers appears to me to have changed. Is that a relevant outcome? Is that due to maybe some other factors? It's hard to break that down, and everybody's going to have a little bit different opinion. What I think, we're going to discuss this, at a board meeting, but what I'm saying is, and I looked to Sarasota, for personal guidance about how we might do things, because they have been very successful in their district in providing, a top grade education, top grade, use of money. And if we're going to use, any district as a model for, be it committees or be it administration, Sarasota is not a bad one to do it. I mean, they're one of the best in the state, and we're, I think, becoming better and better and better through all of our efforts, particularly through our superintendent's efforts and our innovations. But I am pointing out that they work very effectively with having, something like 7 people on their, finance review board. And I am wondering, when we have a board meeting, whether we want to consider reducing the number of members of this committee, and if so, how do we do that? We have a certain number of board members that on this committee, I think, their term is expiring. We have a certain number of board members or committee members who say, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I don't wish to continue, but it's been a real honor to be on this committee. Do we say, okay, we're going to just let those positions sort of die, and we reduce in the charter the number of members of this committee, and we'll decide, do we want this larger number of committee? The feedback I get is we shouldn't have that number. And then the next question I'll repeat is, well, how do you reduce that and still honor those who have given of their time without getting into political picking or anything like that? You can always put names in a hat and say, this person's going to be a 2-year, and really we're the ones who should decide if it's 3 years, 2 years, or 1 year. Although they have some suggestions and their wishes should be considered. But I think those are issues, for our board meeting, and I think we've had a great workshop. I think we've all had the opportunity to hear, great comments from the audience and from among the board. And unless there's a lot of protest, I'm going to call this workshop to an end and adjourn the meeting.
May I say one thing before you adjourn, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, you're going to have to identify yourself when you get to the microphone.
Vice Chairman.
Yeah.
My name is John Horn. I'm Vice Chairman of the Citizens
we've met,
Financial
I think.
Oversight Committee. I'm one of the people that think there's way too many people on there. I'll be honest with you. But if you want to, and it's not, you guys keep talking about 1, 2, and 3-year terms. It's a 3-year term. When the people that, they signed up for 1, they signed up for 2 so that we would have rotating. So the people that are on 1-year terms, when they roll off in 1 month, you'll appoint someone to another 3-year term, right? So if the 5 of you want to appoint someone, it'll be for a 3-year term. So you're going to have 5 appointments every year. So you're going to have 15 at that rate. Now you can change it so it says 2 years, and then you'll have 10, and you'll replace 5 every year that way. But it's a 3-year term. It's not 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. we were all appointed at the same time, so we all chose, there were 18, we chose someone, we need 6 1s, we need 6 2s, and 6 3s. That's how that was determined. But once the 1-year term rolls off, they can ask to be reappointed for a 3-year term, or they can say, thank you, I appreciate the time. It's your decision to reappoint however many you want to appoint. But if everybody wants to appoint one person, you're going to have 15 members plus the 2 automatic bids for the tournament, as it were. So it's a 3-year term according to the referendum and the charter.
Okay.
So it's either going to be 10 at 2 years apiece or 15 if everybody gets to make a pick.
Okay.
If you drop it down to 10, there'll be 5 picks. It needs to be multiples of 3 if it's a 3-year term, so you have the same number roll off. But 4 people would be wonderful with 2, but 15, if everybody wants to put somebody in, that's what it's gonna take. But you do need citizens. It's a citizens' financial oversight. Because if we want to continue this money, whether it's 5% or piddly or you don't need the money, it needs to be successful. And the committee needs to be out there championing this money. Because the end result is to get it reelected, just like your position, right? If you want it reelected, people need to be out in the community that are happy with it and think that we're getting results. And that's what we were charged to do. Show that we're getting good results for the money that we are collecting. We're supposed to make sure we're getting the money. We're supposed to make sure it's going to where it was said it was in the referendum and that we're getting results.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Those final comments, this workshop is adjourned.
Good job.